Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Meryl Gordon, and I'm the author of several biographies, and I teach journalism at NYU. Many of you know my guest, Tony Schwartz. Tony worked at the New York Times, worked at New York Magazine, but of course, what he's famous for is that he ghostwrote. Can you, better? Okay. As I was saying, Tony worked at New York Magazine, worked at the New York Times, and he ghostwrote The Art of the Deal, which was a life-changing experience for Tony in several ways. As he has been public about, he earned more than $1 million, but the experience was so disturbing that he changed his careers entirely. And he founded a company called The Energy Project, which is a consulting company that works with companies and individuals to help them be more productive and have better lives. Now, one of the things I wanted to tell you is that Tony and I have known each other for many years. We went to the University of Michigan together. We worked on the college newspaper. We were very good friends, stayed in touch for a number of years, so that in 1987, when Art of the Deal came out, Tony was kind enough to put my husband and I on the list for the book party at Trump Tower. And I have to say, when the invitation came, I was pleased. I was pleased as a sign of our friendship because I knew Tony probably had a small number of invitations as compared to Donald Trump's list. And also because I knew it would be a hot ticket, there'd be a million interesting, famous people. The night came, my husband and I got all dressed up. We're about to leave. We looked at each other, we said, we can't do this. That was the point when Spy Magazine was calling Donald Trump a short-fingered vulgarian. He was this obnoxious real estate developer. And in the news judgment, of which I have become so proud, I missed the seminal event of the launch of Donald Trump. So I don't know how I feel about that one, but anyhow, I wanted to start with asking you, Tony, you spent a lot of time with Trump before he was a guarded person, before he had people telling him whatever it is they tell him these days. And I was hoping, since we are at a Stop Trump summit, whether you could give us some insights to what provokes the guy, what drives him nuts, what kind of strategies candidates could use to help him make a mistake.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the essence of Trump, as actually is true for most of us, is what's going on inside him and what happened to him, as Oprah would say, what happened. And what happened is not a pretty story. I think he grew up in an incredibly abusive, and I'm not excusing him for anything in saying this, but he had a very abusive father. He had a very distant mother, and he grew up with, a sense of, a morbid fear about his own sense of weakness and inadequacy. And I think that has persisted forever. And I think the whole drift of his career has been about, like any addict, he's looking outside himself for something that's missing inside himself. In his case, it's power and money. Money is power, and power comes from money. And so in answer to your question, I think you saw the dead heart of where Trump is most vulnerable in the trial last week. I'm with Michael Cohen on this, that if you looked at him, I don't think I've almost ever seen him so uncomfortable and so enraged about something that is so much less consequential than the other things he's facing right now criminally. And it's because he makes this, I call it an attribution error. He makes this attribution error that I think sort of is at the heart of the capitalism we're living with right now, which is more money equals more value. And, if what you're doing is you're trying to get a sense of value from outside yourself or from the amount of dollars you have or the power you have, you keep upping the ante, and there's not, you have to keep upping the ante as he does because you're feeling emptier and emptier despite your efforts.
Do you think this particular trial, this sense of his, the 10,000 square foot apartment that he said was 30,000 square feet, do you think all of this will affect him in any way that will be relevant?
Listen, I buy what a number of the other panelists have said today, which is that as far as I'm concerned, the United States and democracy are over. I mean, not the United States is over, but democracy is dead if Trump is reelected. It would be literally the worst thing imaginable that could happen. There's nothing about it that I think would be comforting to anybody. I mean, the need to defeat Donald Trump is so overwhelming because this one crazy sociopath, and he is a sociopath. People call him a narcissist, yes, but a sociopath is someone who has no conscience. Psychopath, sociopath, they're interchangeable. And he is a person without conscience. So what he's going to do, left free to have, to be doing whatever he feels like doing, it will be, I don't even want to think about it, but it's very clear that we need to mobilize, certainly why I'm here.
So, given what you know about his psyche, what could his opponents do to help neutralize that, or again, to maybe encourage him to do something that would, it seems like his followers are so devoted that nothing is going to make a difference.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the brilliant things that he's done, it's not because he's intellectually brilliant, but there's some, evil instinct that is quite brilliant in getting for him what he wants, is to make lying acceptable, to kind of demean the truth to such an extent that people are numb now, not only to his lies, but to the lies of an entire political party, for Republicans. And so he has a hugely unfair advantage when he is it's as if you went on a football field and you had one team on one side who had to abide by the rules that are set in football, and the other team had no compunctions about running outside the lines or about punching other players or anything they wanted to do. How is that a fair game? Now, I do think it was said, I don't remember by whom today, but I do think that there is the potential to wake more of America up to how severe this threat is. Because part of the numbing process he's done, part of what he's done by making unacceptable things no big deal, is to push back people's rational capacity. And I say this for, the vast majority of Americans. I absolutely believe that the vast majority of Americans, if you said, hey, would you mind if Donald Trump babysat for your 6-year-old? would say no freaking way. Keep him away. And we need to wake them up to the fact that if they're terrified about the idea of this guy babysitting for their 6-year-old, they sure as hell better be terrified about him running the country with no one to push back against him.
Is he a different person today than he was when you met him in 1987? I mean, can you draw a through line, and is there ways in which it shaped him? Even when he was elected in 2016, he was elected without any ideology. He didn't believe in anything. He still doesn't believe in anything. He's a nihilist, but he has positions he takes now. And I think what he's done is he's kept narrowing his focus and what he's for or against to fit where he thinks he'll be acceptable. And there's a very small percentage of people, I think, who actually think his behavior is acceptable.
But there are a larger percentage of people who think far-right positions are acceptable, so he's landed there. The trajectory for Trump is that, I mean, he was, as I said a moment ago, he wasn't so apolitical. You know, he gave to all candidates.
He didn't
He didn't give a damn who won or lost so long as he had influence with them. And I think he's become, here's the thing. What's the biggest thing you can do in life? Like, what's the most important thing you can do in life? I'm going to take about 2 hours to answer that question there. I would say that the most important thing you can do in life is throughout your life to become a bigger and bigger human being, meaning that you see more deeply, that you feel more deeply, and that by seeing, particularly by seeing internally, you are capable of making smarter, more connected choices in your life. What's happened to Donald Trump is that he started out small and he got smaller. He is almost invisibly small now as a human being. And so there's very little going on in Donald Trump except a blend of hatred and desperation.
Which brings me a little bit to our title, which is Trump versus New York. Now, obviously, New York was the scene of many of his triumphs, but now, of course, he comes back and he's a defendant in a courtroom. Do you feel like he will have some special revenge against New York? Are we going to get the IRS after all of us?
I mean, honestly, yes. I do.
Are you going to be number one there?
No, Michael Cohen gets it. I was so happy to hear. Yeah, no, he's going first. I have a daughter who lives in Amsterdam, and it seems like she's not coming back. And so my wife and I got an apartment there, and it is, you know, I said it with some seriousness in 2016 and 2020 that if Trump were elected, or in the second case reelected, that I didn't think I could stay in the United States. It is unequivocal in my mind, just me, this part, Michael Cohen, and, you know, be careful because you showed up here. Who knows who's here to take photographs of you. But I think he is going to have an enemies list that makes Nixon's enemies list look like this. For New York, I think he is going to continue. I didn't even want to talk about it as if this will happen. Michael Cohen, no, George Conway said to me in the green room, I think there's a 10% chance that he'll be elected, or call it reelected. I would love to believe that, and yet 10% is terrifying, and it isn't probably 10%. It's probably a heck of a lot higher than that. So yes, I do think that he will do things, you know, in whatever way he can to punish those who he think diminished him.
As an author, a couple times a year, I'm always happy when royalties get dumped into my checking account. I'm wondering how you feel when you get those Trump royalties. Is it?
So I've given away $375,000 since Trump was elected, every dollar of royalties that I've earned, to causes he would despise.
Thank you.
I consider it blood money, and I have no interest.
Can you tell us where have you given it to? What kinds of?
I've given it to environmental groups. I've given it a lot to immigration protectors. I've given it to, I mean, that's a lot of money. And, you know, such a wide range of progressive causes that I can't think of them all now, but those two in particular, climate change and immigration.
So when the money pops in, how do you feel?
Actually, I'm thrilled to be able to use to give money that, money that he in some way is responsible for having generated to things that run directly counter to everything he stands for.
I can see.
But I do, Meryl, I do feel I'm still doing penance. And that I knew while I was doing that book that I'd made a mistake to do it, that he was, I knew who he was, and he was not a different person then than he is now. And so, I have such complex and mixed feelings about that experience, because what Donald Trump ironically did for me is that he led me to the Dharma. I mean, by opposite example. He led me to a wholly different place in my life, and for the last 30 years since that book, I've been focused on what happens inside people that, if you take account of, could change the trajectory of their lives as my doing that work changed the trajectory of mine.
What I've always thought was interesting about this whole thing is there would have been a Donald Trump book. there would have been a Donald Trump book. I mean, he had the contract. It could have been any writer. Your sin, oddly enough, is that you were too good at this. You were able to take his personality and package it into a way that people found it appealing. So it's a complicated thing. You did the job you were assigned to do, and you did it too well. I don't know if you feel that way.
It's not a good sign that I was capable of doing it well, I'll tell you that.
Well, I see that we're out of time. I thank you for coming, and $375 is a lot of money. You did a lot of good things.